Welcome to the Dear Dyslexic Podcast, where lived experience meets real conversation. We shine a light on the stories that need to be heard with honest and inspiring conversations with people with dyslexia and other neurodivergent conditions like dyscalculia, dysgraphia, ADHD and autism. The Dear Dyslexic Podcast is more than just a show. It's a community, a space for connection and a movement to rethink dyslexia. Subscribe today and join us on our journey, one story at a time. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dear Dyslexic Podcast show. Today, I'm thrilled to have Nick Nagzam on the show, and we're going to be talking about his work and his podcast, The Inclusive Shift. I got that right, didn't I, Nick?
You did.
Great. My working memory. Nick was kind enough to invite me on his podcast, which we've done today. And so now I'm getting the opportunity to grill Nick about all the amazing things that he's doing at the moment and his podcast. So welcome so much to the show, Nick.
Thank you very much, Shae, for having me on the podcast.
We were just saying, everyone, that I haven't been able to get my ADHD medication. So if we're a little bit off track and I go a bit sideways today, please forgive me, but I will try to stay on track as much as possible. But Nick, can you please share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey into trying to raise awareness around inclusivity in the workplace for neurodivergent employees in particular?
Yeah, certainly. So my journey in that space probably started when my boys were diagnosed as neurodivergent. I've got two boys. One is autistic with a PDA profile, it's got two different names, but the probably the one that I like to use the most is pervasive drive for autonomy, um, otherwise known as pathological demand avoidance as well. He's also got combined ADHD, and my other son also has ADHD. But when they were diagnosed, I wanted to get a better understanding of neurodiversity and how I could support neurodivergent individuals in general. And it's become a bit of a passion project for me. So in the last 2 years, I've founded the Neurodiversity Research Group at my company, or where I work, I should say. And I've been working directly with the DEI team there on trying to promote different uh, different awareness days, be it autism awareness day or ADHD awareness day, or even dyslexic awareness day as well, just so that we can bring more awareness to the employees, so that they can start to feel more safe, and to become themselves in the workplace as well. Yeah.
It's great you talk about Dyslexic Awareness Day, because we don't often see it happening, even though we actually have a whole month, which actually coincides with ADHD, which is really interesting and great seeing it co-occur so highly together. But we're finding now that a lot of people ask us to come and talk for Neurodiversity Week, which is great as well, that there's now this combined week that helps. We've kind of got different touch points throughout the year that we can help raise awareness. Have you found that?
Yeah, so we've got a bit of a calendar of, we've got Neurodiversity Week, which I believe is somewhere in March. I can't remember exactly. And then obviously the days, individual days or weeks or even months beyond that for the different diagnoses as well. Generally, we try and do 2 or 3 sort of big events where we'll have, people come and speak, or we'll have a morning tea and raise funds for a program or a support, be it a maze for autism awareness, for example, with their Hoodie Up program that they run every year, which I love. Or, we've even run things like domestic violence in the past as well, because, again, a big one for women and children. But, yeah.
Yeah, it is a big one for women and children. And they're all such important events. Do you ever find that workplace gets a bit overwhelmed by the amount of different neurodivergent conditions that they're trying to understand and raise awareness of?
I think It's for me. It's a little bit too early to tell in my workplace. I think we're still very early in raising awareness and maturing our understanding of how to best support neurodivergent individuals. Um, I've definitely seen through the podcast, that there's definitely a level of stigma and misunderstanding of how to best support and best uh, I guess, yeah, best support neurodivergent individuals as a whole. It's definitely something that we need to work on across the board wherever we are.
Yes, it's definitely. I mean, we've seen a big shift in the last couple of years, but there's still a long, long way to go in understanding. And I think even understanding like what are the best supports in the workplace, because things are changing so quickly. And we went from office based to now I love working from home. I can adjust my environment. There's no noise unless my daughter's here on a Wednesday, and that's just pure chaos trying to get anything done. But there's lots of positive changes that we've seen, I think, across the board for, I think, particularly parents. Like we had Ava during COVID, and I can't imagine how parents managed before getting to work before 9 o'clock and children at childcare. Like, I feel bad that Ava's dropped off at 9 o'clock and picked up at 4:30. And my partner says, "Well, imagine what it would have been like before COVID: 6:30 drop off and 6 p.m. pickup." So I think that we've seen a lot of positives for families as well through this change, which I think takes a bit of the cognitive load off if you're a neurodivergent parent and you get the opportunity to work from home. Do you get that opportunity much through your work?
I do. So I'm very, very, very thankful for being able to work from home most of my time, which is phenomenal. Um, it's definitely been helpful, not only as an individual, because I much prefer a quieter environment to be able to work myself, but it also gives me that ability or flexibility to be able to drop and pick up the kids, take my son to his specialist appointments after school, so that I can kind of pick up my laptop and go and work from anywhere, which is great. And work has that understanding that they know I can continue to deliver regardless of where I am and have that capability. But what I'm starting to see more frequently, especially I guess here in Australia, is that organizations are starting to change the dial back, especially in the consulting or banking industries where they're forcing people back into the office a minimum of 3 days a week, and that's taking away people's right to be able to work from where they need to be able to successfully work. You know, would you rather someone be able to deliver at 120% of their productivity from home, or do you want to bring them into the office and make them work at, say, 50 to 60% of their capacity because they're being so distracted by everything else that's going on?
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? Because when I go into the office now, I find that I really struggle with any type of conversation. Like I can't write anything. I can't put a sentence down if there's people talking around me. Even when I wear loops, I find it really hard. But I think one of the challenges, I think, for us as dyslexics is that we were able to get up and walk around to the desk and ask someone a question or how do you spell this or do that. And I feel like when we went online with everything, like I find it really hard when we've got multiple channels, like if you've got a Slack channel, a Teams call, and like emails. And so that's been, I think, one of the ways I've had to learn to adapt is there's so much more written communication going back and forth when we're working from home rather than that just dropping around to someone's desk and getting that support. Have you found that there's been some of those challenges when talking to people on other podcasts or the work you've seen, or do you think generally working from home for neurodivergent people is like the best setup or a mix?
Or I think it's dependent on the individual themselves. Okay, so what works well for me as an individual being working from home may not work for someone else that is neurodivergent. So they may want to be in the office 5 days a week because they prefer a structured environment where they don't have the ability to go and do something else at home, or they're not being distracted by their dog that wants a cuddle. Um, or you could want someone could want a shift of of hours as well. So we've seen lots of different examples where people would prefer to say work 10 to 6 instead of 9 to 5 because their biological clock just wants them to be able to adjust the way that they work. It gives them the ability to maybe go and do something at the post office or do an errand before work and then come into work and then have that ability to focus for those 8 hours. I would never say, people belong in a box because they don't. No one is designed to fit in a standard sort of operating system. I think you need to cater for everybody individually, which as a manager is extremely difficult. I don't say that it's easy because it's not. I'm also a manager of a team of four, and I think the best thing that I do for them is see them all as individuals, not just as a whole team. It gives me the ability to evaluate and support them how they need to be supported so that I can best get the best out of them as an individual, but also as a collective team as well.
And I feel like pre-COVID, that we were in a box, weren't we? There was that expectation, 9 to 5. I mean, one of my jobs before COVID, which was really close to COVID, we had to swipe in and swipe out, like clock in and clock out. And I'd never seen that before in a workplace. And we had to work 6 minutes past the hour, and we'd get an email if we didn't work that extra 6 minutes.
Yeah,
and
it's
that anxiety-provoking environment of clocking on and off in that 6 minutes if you didn't work, it was just, it was archaic. And I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? We've been in environments where we're all put in that box of how you're supposed to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that is the best way to support any individual, regardless of if they're neurodivergent or not. I've always tried to lead with the outcomes based instead of time based. So if someone's delivering an outcome and they're working 10 to 6 instead of 9 to 5, I don't care. As long as what the outcome is being delivered, we're square. I'm happy.
Do you think as the older generations retire that we're used to a hierarchical structure and ingrained working in the office, which we're starting to see, as you said, lots of different companies bringing back, coming back into the office. Do you think that will shift as that generation kind of starts to retire and the younger ones come through? Do you think they will still want this type of flexibility? Because I've heard a lot of young people feel quite isolated and they feel like it's harder to progress their career when they're home. So do you think there'll be a shift? What are you seeing in your workplace or with the conversations you're having at the moment?
I personally haven't seen too much of a shift. I think from everything I've read online, there's a lot of the younger generations, be it Gen Z or the kids in the Gen Alpha generation that are currently still in school. They want a lot of flexibility, so they want the freedom to choose of where they want to be able to work, regardless of whether it's in an office or whether it's at home. And I think providing we have that ability to provide that flexibility, it's going to enable them to be able to be their best selves. I think the challenge that we've got at the moment, and touching back on the banking and the consulting, is there's a level of, if I can't see you, then you're not doing your job, or that level of mistrust of they're not doing their job because I can't see them. And I personally don't think that's a thing. Like if like I said before, if they're delivering an outcome and that outcome is being achieved, then what's the problem?
Yeah, that's exactly right. What is the problem? So I do sometimes get sidetracked in unpacking the dishwasher or hanging out the washing or doing half and half and then going back to work and thinking, what was I doing again? But there's so many benefits to working from home that I just love now. And I mean, our team is global and we don't have any offices. We all work from home. And as we get bigger, we're lucky enough to be able to come together more frequently to bring, well, at least the Australian team together. And so, but yes, that's enabled different people from different backgrounds to be able to work from home in ways that they couldn't before. That's been really exciting. And we get the opportunity to hire amazing people then because of the way that we're structured. And the majority of us are neurodivergent. So again, that's, for them being able to work from home is really helpful to be able to do different things and take those breaks when you need it. And but sometimes it is easy to get distracted by the
No,
dog.
I agree. Look, you can get distracted by the dog. You could get distracted by, like you said before, hanging out the washing. But I guess I saw a graph the other day, and even with those distractions, or what we're calling as distractions working from home, the thing that people don't take into consideration is the walk up conversations that you would have at someone's desk. They're going for coffees, they're going for lunches. All of that was productivity that was taken away from you being able to deliver an outcome inside of an office setting. Since coming home, you might have a quick lunch because you've got back-to-back meetings, or you've got a full day of Teams meetings that you need to deal with. So having those micro distractions of going and hanging out some washing, or giving the dog a cuddle briefly, that is still less distraction time than what you actually had in the office full time.
Yeah, and I often forget to have lunch because I'm working straight through, so I don't even take that lunch break I would have taken if I was in the office. Because you're often socializing and taking that time to connect in with your team when you're together, which wouldn't be classified as a distraction. But yes, if you go and hang out the washing, then you're being distracted and you're not being productive.
That's
Where
right.
really, if I hang out the washing now, it means I can probably work longer later because it's done and dusted, and then I can go and pick up Ava. So yes, it's a different way, isn't it? But coming back to your to the beginning of your journey, how old were your children when they were diagnosed?
So one of them was diagnosed when they were 4, and he was diagnosed early, when they were going through COVID. So COVID lockdowns were a bit of a pain when it came to the boys starting school. They were in kinder at the time, and when we were thrown into lockdown, we were given, almost a telephone book worth of paperwork, or homework that they were both required to do over that time. One son would go and do it and smash it out, his daily tasks out, and then he had the entire day to go and do whatever else he wanted. The other one um, would refuse to do the work, or would sit in front of the work for several hours and only get maybe one page done. So we noticed that there were differences between them both, and we weren't quite sure what was causing that. But when we then went and had him diagnosed, we understood that he was autistic, and he had his brain obviously was not working as his brother's was. And then my other son, he wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until after he broke his leg, which was about 2 years ago. Um, Before that, he was able to sort of function at school quite fine. But when he broke his leg and he was at home for 6 weeks, bound to a wheelchair, going back to school, he found it really difficult to focus, and just couldn't do the simple tasks that he was able to do previously. And what we found was that he was ADHD, and he needed the medication to assist him in being able to focus more in class as well.
What do you think that trigger was when he broke his leg? Do you think it was just that then it made it become more noticeable for you? Was it because before he was moving about a lot more and he could use his energy in different ways?
I think that was probably a big portion of it. So prior to breaking his leg, he was quite physically active. After breaking his leg, he wasn't allowed to do sport for 9 months because
Wow.
he snapped his femur in two, so the doctors just went, no sport, otherwise you're going to break it again. And they were like, oh, okay. So for him, that was a really big impact because it impeded his ability to go and do the things that he loved the most, like
Mm.
parkour. Um, so not having that ability to have an outlet to get rid of that energy that he was originally burning through sport or other activities, I think really impacted his ability to focus in class.
Yeah. Yeah, that physical energy can be really obvious if you don't get to use it up during the day. By the end of the day, it feels like it's stored in there and it all explodes out at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, even in myself, um, if I'm stuck in meetings all day and I haven't had an opportunity to go for a run or go to the gym, I struggle to just focus on being able to do something. So it's normally, hey, wife, can you look after the kids? I need to go for a 30-minute run just to burn off some energy, and then I'll come back and we can go back to doing things ourselves. But yeah, it's challenging, but I think if you can balance it, it works well.
And so, what are the strategies you've put in as a family, having both your boys neurodivergent? How does that work day to day? Because, as a neurodivergent parent, I find it quite challenging, especially at the end of the day, trying to regulate my emotions. Um, and I don't have physical energy. I have internal energy that, like, where my brain doesn't stop all day. Um, and so, by the end of the day, you're mentally very, very tired. So, how do you manage two neurodivergent children when you're both working and, you've got lots of other competing priorities? Like, what are some of the things that really help your family manage?
Look, I think it's extremely hard to kind of, we all struggle. I think the one thing that helps myself, as I said before, was going for a run. I typically go for a run in the morning to kind of self regulate myself. Um, and then with the boys, it's trying to manage their expectations around access to things like devices or TV. Um, Although it's a great opportunity for them to wind down at the end of the day, at the same time we need them to be able to still be able to focus on their ability to do their homework that is required from the school. So we limit, what we've done is limit things like TV time, or we've set screen times on their, say, iPads or their switches, so that they, say, only get 30 minutes of switch time between the time they get home from school and, say, 5 o'clock, and then their iPads are locked from 7 o'clock, so that we've got an hour before bedtime to do that wind down, that ability to have the showers, sit down and do a reader, um, and just have no screen time for that hour before bed, because I think that helps them start to regulate themselves, and then they can jump into bed and they normally listen to an audio book or just some music, and they often drift to sleep from there.
Yeah, screens are a big issue, aren't they?
Yep.
And I find that it takes up to an hour and a half to get to sleep after we've had that hour of wind down. That's really hard. The physical energy she still has at the end of the day. I don't know how she does it.
Little
I'm
Energizer bunnies.
exhausted. And then she's still got all this energy. And I think this is my bedtime. You need to be asleep. But I find that, it's really, that part is really hard getting her to sleep, even though she was such a good sleeper when she was small. But it's completely different now.
Yeah, the boys. I mean, the boys have always slept 10 to 12 hours a night, which is great. The challenge, I guess, that we've found was, since starting them both on Ritalin or medication for the ADHD, they've one of them has needed to go on a slow release melatonin to help him get to sleep, because the medication, even though it's out of his system technically, from because he's only got the short acting Ritalin. He still finds it challenging. So with a slow release melatonin, it helps him kind of settle down and stay asleep longer, instead of kind of waking up. Um, my other son hasn't had that problem with his, which is great. He did have like a sleep joel at some point, just to kind of give him a bit of a herbal remedy to help. But he's finding now that he doesn't need that at all. So he's just self-settling and going back to sleep himself.
And when they were diagnosed, or when your first son was diagnosed and then your second, as like a dad, how did you find, because we have lots of parents that we work with that find it quite isolating, particularly if then they go on to get diagnosed themselves. But did you find it quite isolating, or were you able to connect in with support for yourself when the diagnosis started to come through for your children? Was there anything that kind of helped you in that moment? Because we often, it can be quite scary, and the research says that for some parents there's a grief and there's lots of different emotions that happen when their child's diagnosed with a neurodivergent condition or difference. Was there anything that helped you, if there's any parents that listening that might have be going through a diagnosis with their children at the moment, that helped you during that time?
I guess for me, I think the first thing that I was provided as soon as my son was diagnosed with autism was the link to Amaze. So Amaze is a local Melbourne charity that supports families with autism. They also advocate through policy change for the government. They connected us with them and Autism Connect to be able to ask any questions that we may have had beyond that. For me, I wanted to know more and more about how his brain worked and how I can best support him. The challenge, I guess, at the time was getting the right supports in place so that I was able to not only help myself understand how to best support him, but also to ensure that he was being supported as well. I think that was probably the biggest one for me. Other than that, I have tried to find almost any book that I could possibly find to learn more about autism, ADHD, or neurodivergence in general, just to better understand how their brains work, and even potentially how my brain works. I'm not diagnosed myself, but there's a high chance, given that both ADHD and autism are like in the 70 to 80% hereditary, profile markers. So it's either come from myself or my wife at some point.
I was going to ask if you could see the genetic link, because I often say that it's my dad who's dyslexic, and he shows a lot of traits of ADHD and autism, and one of my brothers shows a lot of traits of all three as well. And so yes, it's interesting to see, because then a lot of people we work with, it's the children get diagnosed and then they go, oh, hang on a minute, I was sitting in that test and I was ticking all those boxes too. And then they come to us and say, I've just been diagnosed as well. So then there's like lots of things happening in a family, isn't there? If you're working through that diagnosis process for your child, but then at the same time you're ticking some of those boxes and you think, oh, this could be from me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of look the older they get, the more traits I see of myself or my wife or even sometimes my dad in the kids. Dad is dyslexic as well, I believe. I'm not sure if he was formally diagnosed or not way back when. But I've never been diagnosed. It's something that I intend to do, just more so I can start to better understand how my brain works, and understand my triggers beyond the kids. Because yes, as a parent, your kids' neurodivergence can be a trigger for your own neurodivergence as well. But I think for me, there's definitely things that I see in both the boys. But even my wife is like, well, I see those as well. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we should both think about being diagnosed so that we can better support ourselves and better support the kids as well.
Because when you were doing all the research and through all your conversations, like, has that helped you to understand yourself more? Because as you've been learning for your children, you going, yes, okay, this is most likely me. And then you can start to put some of those strategies in for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, especially through the conversations on the podcast, like the more I have conversations with someone that has ADHD or autism or that is even twice exceptional, I sit there and go, huh, okay, that sounds like me, or that sounds like my wife, or that sounds like my boys. Okay, what strategies are you guys using? How can I take those strategies and try and support my sons, or even myself? I think one of the biggest ones more recently is instead of having things on an electronic diary, I've got a physical diary now just to help me remember and jot things down throughout the day. As I found having an electric one was not as useful as having a physical one. So there's certain things that I think as I've come along the journey, I've started to realize, okay, if you adjust these things, be it the diary, for example, then there's less clutter in your brain, and I have the ability to best support the kids as well.
Yeah, a lot of our clients use the Remarkable notepad, which I
Okay.
don't know if you've seen that one.
I have, yeah, they're
Yeah.
the inkless or the electronic notepads, yeah.
Yeah, but you still get to draw. And now they're in color as well. I really need to get one for myself because I find, yeah, having a notepad just stops all those thoughts running around at the end of the day when the medication's worn off and you really want to go to sleep, but your brain just won't shut down. You're like, oh, just please go to sleep.
Yep.
And you're awake till 12 o'clock at night. But it was interesting you said about how, when your child's neurodivergence can trigger you, particularly if you're a neurodivergent parent. And I often can say that even though Ava's not diagnosed, she does have, I say, one day she'll listen to his podcast and say, Mum, why were you talking about me? Stop talking about me. But there's definitely traits. And I think now, being diagnosed with ADHD myself, I can start to understand what's happening. But then I also feel bad because I say all the terrible things you shouldn't say, like, can you please sit still? Can you please stop rolling around? Like the automatic statements that we were told as a child that just naturally come out of our mouth. And then I feel terrible because I'm like, I shouldn't be saying any of these words. Stop saying them. And then I get into this cycle of feeling guilty because I shouldn't be saying these words. So it'd be great if you have any tips for me or the listeners around any of the language, because the language is hard.
I would say I don't have any tips in that space. I struggle myself. Like it's so hard to stay regulated when, especially with my son that's got PDA, because he will push the boundaries to the nth degree. And normally for me, that triggers me to become quite frustrated because I um, I guess I've grown up in such an environment where it was so structured and everything had to be a certain way, and you know we were always on time for everything, and we were ready to go and out the door. But now it's more I need to kind of, although we have a time that we need to leave, I need to allow him to get ready in the way that he needs to get ready, and that can be very frustrating. Like this morning he wanted to spend 20 minutes on his iPad. I'm like, it's locked. I'm not sure why you're even on it. Like, and that was before he went and got breakfast. And then, while he was having breakfast, he was dancing around the dining table. And I'm like, just get ready, please. It's like, you know what? As long as he's ready to go before we're out the door, it can be challenging. I'm trying more and more not to raise my voice, but at them, because it's not going to help the situation. But for me, and then that's exactly one of the reasons why I want to go and be diagnosed myself, is so that I can start to learn and better understand my own triggers, so I can try and prevent those triggers from occurring.
Yeah, the sidestep of dancing, or Ava will sit there and she's singing to the dog. We're like, you're supposed to be in bed. What are you doing? Stop singing to the dog. And it still takes her then an hour and a half to go to sleep. But yeah, it's really hard when you're tired and you've got the added layer yourself of being neurodivergent. Of then how do you model and get them to bed without feeling internally enraged?
Yeah. Bedtimes can be some most of the time they're pretty good, but sometimes my son with PDA will drag it out as much as he can because he doesn't want to go to bed. And more recently, we've found that he's starting to sleepwalk, which is a new one for us. So we're trying to understand what's currently causing that, um, and we're currently putting it down to he's just started back out at school. So whether it's nervousness around that, we're not sure, but he doesn't speak or anything when he walks. So he comes out, or it looks as though he's complaining about a sore stomach, but then he'll walk back into bed and climb back into bed and go back to sleep. And it's like, I'm not sure what that was about, but let's make sure you're in bed.
For those who haven't heard of PDA before, can you just give a quick overview of what it is?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier in the conversation, it's got two different names: pervasive drive for autonomy or pathological demand avoidance. I think the latter is probably the most common, but the former is probably the newer and I'd say the better way of explaining the situation. So someone that has been diagnosed with a PDA profile, which is a profile of autism, um, basically needs to be in charge or in control of the situation. So if they feel as though their control is being taken away from them, they struggle with the ability to acknowledge and participate in being able to do that piece of work. So that, as an example, um, while the boys were on school holidays, I said, "Hey, why don't we go to the tennis?" Because they really, really enjoyed going to the tennis last year. And my son with PDA was like, "Nope, I'm not doing it because all the other kids that are going don't know how to play tennis, and I'm an awesome superstar at tennis." I'm like, "Buddy, you've never played tennis in your life." So that was challenging. Um,
So did
but
you get to the
yeah,
tennis game?
we did not get to the tennis, unfortunately. Instead, we took the opportunity to go to the beach and spend some time at the beach as a family.
Still a nice thing to do.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope we see him on the court one day.
Fingers crossed.
Um, is there anything else? Because we've covered a lot of things today. Is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about, whether it's your podcast or the work you're doing around raising awareness of neurodivergence, or just how you thrive with neurodivergent children? Manage sounds negative, but really it's we're all trying to survive and thrive. Any of those key areas that we've touched on today, are there any last words you'd like to add to any of those topics?
Um, Look, I think that the podcast is a way for me to provide or raise awareness around neurodivergence and help organizations get a better understanding that it doesn't cost an absolute fortune to look after and support neurodivergent individuals. As a parent of neurodivergent individuals, I think the thing that we don't do for ourselves as frequently as we should is give ourselves a little bit of leeway to say, "Hey, it's okay. You are in a challenging situation. You are, not dealing with neurotypical kids, and that comes with its own challenges. So give yourselves that leeway. Give yourself that ability to say it's okay. I will work through this. Um, yeah, I think that's it.
Well, that's great, and a really nice way to end, because we can be hard on ourselves.
Absolutely.
whether it's the words we've used or the volume level of our own voice, or just our own fatigue. So I think self-care and kindness to ourselves is really important. And I know that I definitely need to practice more of it.
No, I agree.
And I need to find a good psychologist, which we always talk about on the show, is finding, mental health is such, that's key. If we can't look after ourselves, then we can't be our best for our children either. So it's been so nice having you on the show and learning more about your work, and hearing from another parent around strategies is always so helpful, not just for myself, but for our audience as well. So I really appreciate your time today, Nick. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening again to the Dear Dyslexic Podcast, and we look forward to talking to you next time. So thanks again, and bye for now. If you haven't done so already, make sure you sign up to our mailing list so you can keep up to date with everything we are doing at Rethink Dyslexia. So head to rethinkdyslexia.com.au. And don't forget, if there's anything you heard today that was distressing, you can contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.